Welcome back to yet another episode of the Football Funders podcast, brought to you in association with, let's see if I can do this properly this time. Let Us Talk Mental Health, the football team raising money for mental health charity Mind. You can follow them at Let Us Talk _MH online. And to the Proper Blokes Club, at Blokes Club on Twitter or www.theproperblokesclub.co.uk. Walking and talking, breaking the stigma surrounding men's mental health. I'm back with that man, Dan, again. How you doing, Dan?
Good afternoon, or good morning, technically. I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. It's been nice. As wonderful as the World Cup has been, it's been nice to have a 2-day break from any football because I loved it. No, not for you?
No, I had to watch Charlton in the middle of that.
We'll get on to Charlton in a little bit. But we're going to start with the World Cup because the round of 16 has ended. The quarterfinal draw has been made. And yes, England are through, much to my surprise, based on my original predictions. And let's do this the way we normally do this. We have the FIFA World Cup bracket of 2022. Bless you, Dan.
Yeah, there was a cough, but
Oh, well, bless you anyway. Thanks to ESPN for this one. I was quite surprised at how good this was for ESPN and it's football. But there you go.
Soccer.
We're going to line up our predictions along with what actually happened. So the Netherlands beat United States 3-1. Just tick that one over to get the goal scorers. Memphis Depay, Daley Blind, and your lad Denzel Dumfries, Dan. And a rather bizarre goal from Haji Wright for the United States. I don't know if you happen to see it.
No, we were doing the podcast.
No? Oh, it was a bit of a... It definitely was a fluke. Go back and have a look at it. It's definitely a fluke. Who did we predict the Netherlands
We
for
were
that?
doing the podcast you heard before.
Right.
We did. We both said that Netherlands would win quite comfortably. It looked like they did. Obviously, we were doing the podcast during this game, so I haven't seen it, and I didn't go back to watch it either.
But you'd rather watch Charlton. Poor you.
I can't remember what day did we record.
I have no idea. Whatever the day Netherlands versus the United States was. Let me see if it's got the date on it when we fling back up.
Precisely.
No, it doesn't have the date.
Like it was Thursday.
It wasn't that long ago. Let's say that.
We played. It was Friday, I think.
It was last night, wasn't it? You played?
Charlton, yeah. I meant Holland.
Yeah. Okay. Argentina beat Australia in a much closer game than I thought it was going to be. I think we've got to give credit to the Aussies. They've done miles better than anyone expected. But Lionel Messi and Julian Alvarez and Enzo Fernandez own goal for Australia. Did we predict Argentina?
I watched this. I couldn't work out if Australia were good. We did, yeah. I couldn't work out if Australia were good or if Argentina just aren't that good. Messi is carrying Argentina.
I think it's a bit of both, but I also think one of the biggest problems with Argentina is they've got so much talent that you expect them to be absolutely outstanding, and anything less than outstanding just doesn't cut it. So I think there's maybe a little bit of over expectation for Argentina. Everyone's expecting them to be up there with Brazil and France as world beaters because of who they've got, but they're not going to be that. So we'll see how they do against the Netherlands in the next round, which is, I think you predicted the next rounds, didn't you? I don't think I did.
Yes.
So you called that one. Well done. Next was Croatia versus Japan, 1-1, and Croatia won on
bad penalties.
Yes, and we're going to get to more bad penalties later. 1-1 there. Daisen Maeda, if I'm pronouncing that properly, apologise to anybody who's Japanese if that's offensive. And Ivan Perisic of Tottenham scoring for Croatia. I don't know where to find the penalties.
For Tottenham.
I'm not going to go and find the penalties.
You don't need to.
Not that important. Let's be honest.
Japan can't take penalties.
They can't, and neither can Spain, but we're going to get to that.
Japan look like they've never seen a penalty before in their life.
Now, I had a sneaking suspicion. I don't know what we predicted, but I had a sneaking suspicion that
We both picked Japan.
we both picked Japan, did we? Oh, my camera
Yep.
seems to be having fun. Oh, well, I hope you can still see this. My camera's not important.
It's had a moment.
It has had a moment, hasn't it? We'll get back to that in a minute. As long as the screen's still scrolling, you can see it. That's fine. Brazil versus South Korea. I think that was a very comfortable win that we all expected, don't you?
Yes, and we predicted whoop-up was the terminology we used, and I mean, wasn't it, really?
I think it was a very fair whoop-up. I think they took their foot off the gas in the second half. I think it shows from all their goals being scored in the first half, and second half they just could not really be bothered, and they got a game back.
Lucas packet of crisps.
Yes, indeed. So I'm just going to stop the screen share for a minute and sort out my camera. I don't know where my camera's gone. Stop video. Start video again. Let me start video again. Why won't you? Oh dear.
Rocket, you have.
Cannot start video. Failed to start the video camera. Please select another video camera in settings. Let's try my easy cam. See if that will start.
Fucked it, he has.
Yes, very fucked it. He has. Or I have not fucked it. Let's unplug the camera.
This is a nice edit point.
There we go.
Good morning.
It looks terrible, but that's the one that's on my. Let's try. There we go. We're back together now. There we go. Let's go back to the screen share.
Oh, breaking news.
Breaking news. Go on, breaking news. We can't edit now. Breaking news.
Breaking news. Spain have sacked manager Luis Enrique.
That's hardly surprising, is it? I mean, let's be honest.
But it is breaking news. So
it is breaking news. There you go. You heard it here first, and you'll be hearing this late anyway because I'm gonna edit it and upload it. So we comfortably predicted. I think Brazil probably could have gone to score on 4 more in the second half had they bothered. Let's be honest. The attacking talent in that Brazil squad is bananas.
They needed 10-0 to break the record.
So we got one wrong so far. England versus Senegal.
There's more to come, don't worry.
Let's talk England while we're doing this. 3 goals for England. And that's gone back to Brazil versus South Korea for some reason. That's the wonders of using a website.
That's the wonder.
Let's talk England. Goals from Jordan Henderson, Harry Kane, and Bukayo Saka. Or Bukayo, as Pete used to say.
Goal from Jordan Henderson.
I know, of all things. Now, let's give Gareth Southgate his props. We're through. It wasn't as one-sided as it looks. That first half was quite dicey at times.
Well, after we score, as soon as we scored the first, it was over.
I think for me, they
did nothing as soon as we scored.
I think for me, it was the second goal. I think that flattened them. I think getting that second goal just before half time, I think was just like, okay. But for the first, 35 minutes, it was a lot trickier than it was going to look. But you've got to give credit to Gareth Southgate because it seems like I've knocked him in the past for not having the ability to change. This World Cup is dramatically proving me wrong, from the big things to the little things. Like in the first game, we conceded 2 goals later on, even though it was a convincing win. And I think he noticed that we needed something extra in midfield. So he swapped out Mason Mount for Jordan Henderson. And that's proved effective. I think they were trying to overload in the wide areas and they left the centre of the pitch too far open. But credit to Gareth Southgate, he recognised that and changed it for the first one. In the second game against the United States, I think he learned that he could, when you can't pass and break the press from the back. I think it showed against this match at Senegal that he switched from trying to play out from the back to kicking long to Harry Kane from goal kicks to stop them from initiating their press. I think that was quite a key change.
Have you read the article about Lee Carsley?
No, I have not.
So Lee Carsley, who's the England under-21 coach, apparently did a presentation to the players. He's gone out there to assist Southgate and the coaches.
Oh, fair play.
he did a presentation to the players the night before the Senegal game, basically saying this is where we attack Senegal, and was highlighting the long ball up to Harry and then play off Harry. Was all part of his presentation, which obviously the players then went on to be successful with.
I think you've got to give Gareth Southgate actual credit for being open to having somebody else come in and basically coach his team. I think that's
really
what you
want a coaching staff for, isn't it?
Exactly. And if you're bringing in somebody else from the outside to do that, then fair play to you. And I also think that we've criticised quite openly his in-game tactics and managerial ability, but making that change when it didn't work previously compared to USA when he didn't change it too much and we were still getting done by the press. I think you've got to give him credit for being open to change and proving a lot of his critics, including me, wrong compared to the previous tournament. England go on to face France, who won 3-1 against Poland. Some more awful penalties.
La France.
Lewandowski got lucky and got to retake his penalty.
Oh yeah,
even though it was absolutely rubbish. So goals from Olivier Giroud, 2 from Kylian Mbappe, and 1 from Robert Lewandowski. Is Olivier Giroud arguably one of the most unappreciated strikers? He's now France's top scorer, I believe.
I think we talked about this on a previous podcast. I think we did when we were discussing the Premier League, kind of like we were talking about Premier League strikers of all time. I believe Olivier Giroud came up, and we were kind of all in agreement. He never got the credit he deserved, especially at Chelsea. I think he did a lot of things for Chelsea. At Arsenal, I think he did get the credit. At Chelsea, he didn't. And it's the same for France. He's now their all-time leading goal scorer, as you just said. And I was talking to a friend yesterday about this England game. Obviously, we'll get on to England-France in a bit of a deeper conversation once we've cleared through the 16. Giroud's the one that concerns me the most, but we'll get on to that.
Yeah. So France looking comfortably, arguably up there with Brazil as the 2 best teams in the World Cup thus far. Would you agree? Outside of us?
Yeah, outside of us. I'd say we're up there, to be fair.
I think we've performed. I think we've earned our place up there thus far, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Morocco versus Spain. I'm not even going to click on that one because there was no goals. Not a lot really happened until we got to the penalties. And arguably the worst penalty shootout I think I've ever seen in my life.
So bad.
It was absolutely terrible.
So I was sitting on the bus going home and I was watching the game. And the commentator said, whoever the co-commentator was for the game, I can't remember who it was, but said that Luis Enrique made a comment before the tournament. If you've not taken 100 penalties or whatever it was,
it was 1,000, I think. Yeah,
like you're not in the squad because if we go to penalties, well, doesn't matter apparently. But they did if I'm correct, I may be wrong. Spain did in England at the Euros because they brought on Pablo Sarabia.
Yeah, he got a couple of minutes.
Missed the penalty.
Yeah, but I think there is a subtle difference. Sarabia was on the pitch for longer than Rashford.
He came on in the 119th minute.
Yeah, but he played. He got a couple of touches on the ball. I think he had a shot on. Well, don't want to say on target, but he had a shot. It wasn't like the case with, I think it was Saka and Rashford, wasn't it? Who just walked onto the pitch to take penalties.
Yeah, but they were on for the same amount of time.
But Spain, oh my gosh, if that's their rule, 1,000 penalties. Sergio Busquets has very clearly never taken a penalty in his life, judging by his penalty. It's the first penalty shootout I've ever seen that I think a team has missed the first 3 penalties or had it saved.
So bad.
It was awful. It's like they didn't even look like they were trying.
And after the game, there was a big thing made by, I think it was Rodri, about Morocco's style of play. And I thought, really, you should be looking at yourself, because there was a point in commentary where it was John Hartson. I'm sure it was John Hartson. And he said, oh, it's been magical. Spain have had 950 passes of the football. And I thought,
you've got to do something with it.
To where?
Yeah.
If Aymeric Laporte's got 200 passes because he's passed to his keeper and back, what's that? This is my argument with again, we'll get on to Charlton in a minute, but this was one of my arguments with Ben Garner was he'd come out and say, well, we had 65% possession. Right, but we've done fuck all with it. So it doesn't matter.
I was going to say, I can't remember if it was you. I think we had this conversation before, and I just found the old Barcelona side under Pep absolutely boring because they just pass you to death.
Well, I don't watch Man City for that reason. I can't. Man City. Well, now they've signed Haaland. They play with a bit more
directness.
Yeah. Before it was like, we'll have Yaya Toure on the ball for 2.5 hours, and then see Yaya became Rodri and etc. Fernandinho.
So yeah, so very little to say about this. On the other hand, I'm sad to say I missed this and had to catch the highlights. Portugal 6, Switzerland 1. Goals from Goncalo Ramos. Never even heard
We got
of
this
him.
one wrong too. We both said Switzerland would win this, by the way.
Yeah. Pepe, Rafael Guerrera, Rafael Leao, and a consolation for Manuel Akanji, who looks, I've got to say, to be a really decent signing for Manchester City. He seems like a great defender and scores goals. Cristiano Ronaldo, obviously, the talking point in this yet again, in the fact that he was dropped to the bench, he did not start. And Portugal promptly go out and wallop, arguably one of the most solid sides in recent international football history, I would argue. As you've always said, they're the benchmark. If you can beat them, then you're a decent side. I would argue that Switzerland were, having seen the highlights, were a lot poorer than they usually were, which allowed Portugal to whoop them. But yeah, Portugal definitely have the potential to whoop anyone, I think, judging by their talent. And if they stop playing for Ronaldo as they have done thus far, and got to give credit to the coach, massive cojones for dropping Ronaldo. It's interesting now that he's been benched by Juventus, Manchester United, and Portugal, but everybody is still saying that those three managers are wrong and Cristiano Ronaldo needs to play. But I feel very sorry for the young lad, Ramos, who scored a hat-trick, and nobody's talking about him because they're all talking about Ronaldo still. And I think he deserves much praise. I had to look him up because I'd never heard of him. He's like some 21-year-old from Benfica, and his goal-scoring record is actually really decent.
He was very close to joining PSG in the summer, but they went elsewhere.
Stay where you are. Or come to Man United, lad. You look like a proper finisher. We could do you.
We've got some strikers available if you'd like them.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Okay. Well, they claim to be strikers anyway.
Not the quality we're looking for, but thanks very much. And plus, Chucks is barely fit.
No, he's the one. He's the one you can't have.
So Portugal,
we kind of need him.
Portugal comfortably through. I'm sure if Man United offered you 5 million for Chucks and Ike, you'd take it.
Oh yeah, I would, but that would be nice. No, we won't go into the owner situation just yet.
Right, so
we'll wait.
Netherlands Argentina is the first quarterfinals. You've already done yours. It's tomorrow. It's 12th of the 9th at 7 p.m. So
I'm gonna miss that. Balls.
I'm not sure when that is. When is that?
Tomorrow, 7 p.m.
Oh, is it tomorrow? Oh,
that's what you just said. It's tomorrow at 7 p.m.
Did I just say that? Oh my God, this is terrible. Don't let me present this show, Dan. What are you doing? Who do we think? You predicted yours, didn't you? Who did you have go through? Argentina?
I had Argentina. I still think Argentina, but I think it's extra time penalties job.
I've got a funny feeling. I think Netherlands could have Argentina. You know, I'm going to back the Netherlands on this one. I think since they changed their lineup slightly and their tactics just a little bit, Cody Gakpo seems to have really surprised me. I thought he was a wide player, sort of or an inside forward if you have, but he seems to be doing very well playing through the middle. I know he didn't score in the last game, but Memphis Depay is back and fit, and he seems to have added an extra dimension for Holland that I don't know if it's maybe he's matured a lot, but it's just something we didn't see when he was at Man United, but he was about 18, 19 when we signed him. So you never know. So you're saying Argentina, I'm saying Netherlands. Croatia versus Brazil tomorrow at 3 o'clock. It's Brazil, isn't it, really?
Lappy.
I was going to say, Croatia have got a habit of getting to latter stages of tournaments by boring people to death.
Yeah, I was going to say, by doing absolutely nothing. It's genuinely impressive.
But judging by this Brazil side, I don't think they're going to get away with this. Do you think this Brazil side took the piss against South Korea a little bit with some of their goal celebrations? And there
No,
was some keepy uppies and some seal headers. And
no, this is
no,
their culture.
you're happy to see all that stuff? We
No,
haven't
I
seen that
mean
from them in years, though. Let's be fair.
it's Brazil. It's the way that they express themselves. There'd be stuff that our players would probably do that would piss them off, like crunching people in the tackle and stuff.
I was
People
going to
just need
say, I
to
think
stop growing and getting upset because they don't. It's not. Sorry, Roy Keane, but just because it doesn't happen in Ireland doesn't mean it doesn't happen around the world. You absolute Burke.
that man is the biggest contradiction I've ever known. He's like, oh, you shouldn't be taking the piss. You shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be doing that when it's Brazil. But when it's Ronaldo, he's like, oh, no, you can't be leaving him on the bench. Oh,
At the end of
no,
the day,
he's a star. He's a star. He's got to play. He's got to play. But you know full well that if Ronaldo pulled that stuff and refused to come on when Roy Keane was still playing at Old Trafford, Roy Keane would have booted him around the training ground the following day for being
yeah.
disrespectful.
Oh,
Let's not forget that this is a guy who got
credit
basically
to Cristiano. Oh,
bombed out of Old Trafford for making a few comments on the Man United TV show about how bad his fellow players were playing, and Alex Ferguson promptly moved him on to Celtic.
yeah, and also let's not forget as well that he's also the player that walked away from his country in a World Cup.
I'm going to people complain about that. I disagree. I've read his book. I've read Mick McCarthy's
So have
book.
I just don't think.
And
I just think you should. I just think you're at a World Cup still.
I genuinely believe that I think he had a valid point in. I'm not sure he actually walked away. I think he was actually sent home, depending on who you believe. But I think it was well within his rights.
Other players' accounts tell you that he walked.
But I think it was well within his rights to criticise the state of the place and the lack of professionalism at the time. And I think Ireland or Air or whatever they're going by now, because everybody's changing their names, have learned from that episode and made things a bit more professional. So fair play to them. We'll come back to England and France in a second. Morocco versus Portugal. Morocco, very much the surprise package that we didn't think would get as far as they've done. They seem quite resolute and quite sturdy, but I think Portugal are going to have them, don't you?
Portugal are the opposite scale of possession football. They play very direct to Spain, and Portugal I think, can break this Morocco team down and will.
And I think if they keep the same lineup that they used in the last match, I don't think you can justify putting Ronaldo back in the squad at the expense of Ramos now, can you? You come on and scored a hat-trick.
Who else plays up front for them? To be fair, I've barely watched any Portugal this tournament.
They seem to be going under the radar a little bit, or is it me? No one seems to be backing them. Everyone's talking France, Brazil, and England. Portugal seem to sort of quietly and effectively seem to be going about their business, and they only talk about Portugal when they talk about Cristiano Ronaldo. I think a lot of these Portuguese players, I think it's no coincidence that since Ronaldo's left Manchester United and been dropped by Portugal, that Bruno Fernandes looks like a completely different player for both club and country. So we're predicting Portugal to go through comfortably.
Bueno, see.
So Portugal through comfortably, Brazil through comfortably. Dan thinks Argentina via penalties. I think Netherlands can have them in 90 minutes. England versus France. Let's talk England-France. Go ahead, Dan.
So I don't want to make a prediction. I'm going to sit on the fence in some style. But I'll explain why, and I will own it in the next round if it goes wrong. I think it all depends on Southgate's bottle.
Do you think he's going to choke and go back to 3 at the back because of Mbappe?
I think if he goes to 3 at the back, we haven't got a chance. I don't think we could cope with the overload in their midfield, and I'm already concerned about not even Mbappe against Kyle Walker. Giroud against Maguire and Stones concerns me.
Yes, I would agree with that.
He's too smart of a player to be in between two boneheads that will drop a clanger at some point. Harry Maguire did it against Senegal multiple times. That was his. Ironically, last Thursday I sat here on this podcast and said how well of a World Cup he came. Then he shat the bed against Senegal. I'm not John Stones' biggest fan either. Defence is where I think is our weak spot. So if we go with 5 at the back, I'm a bit concerned. Also, though, I also believe France's weak spot is is at the back. Rafa Varane does not look fit.
No, I agree with that.
Hernandez, which one was the one that got injured? Lucas that played and got injured, right?
I think it's Lucas Hernandez who got injured. I think it's Tio Hernandez who is playing, but I
Whichever
could be wrong. Let me
whichever
quickly
the one is
Google
now,
that.
the
Let me
Hernandez that's
quickly
playing
Google that.
now doesn't understand when a football's behind him that he has to go and get it. So I think that could be a point for us to really attack. I'd love us to stay with the three in the middle, match them up. You have Declan Rice on Griezmann, and then you can kind of let Bellingham because Bellingham versus Tuchemane is going to be a battle for years and years to come on club and hopefully international stage because they're both very young. So that's going to be a really nice battle. Then I think we can make with Foden. I'd put Foden on Hernandez personally and just let Foden run rings around him. And then you could put Saka on the other side with Pavard. I do think their defence is their weak spot. We know that Hugo Lloris is a bit bonkers and makes the odd mistake. I said Varane doesn't look particularly fit. There's a chance that we could attack and get away with it, but I think it all depends on the formation. For me, it's important that we match up in the midfield. I'd rather we matched up in the midfield like we have been with Henderson, Rice, and Bellingham, than go to a three at the back and try to sit there and deal with Griezmann's runs. And because I genuinely believe as much as they can attack and cause problems, we can do the same because their defence I don't think is as good as it was 4 years ago.
It is Lucas Hernandez, by the way, who's left because he's got an ACL injury apparently. Speedy recovery to him for that. I think we'll go 4-5-1. I'm not convinced he'll go three at the back because I think Mbappe. I know I can see the logic. Go to three at the back, put Kyle Walker in there, and have him man mark Mbappe. But
you can have him man mark
Mbappe
sure. From right back.
I think as much as I've said that France have still got a good midfield, even though Kante and Pogba aren't there, I still think England's is better. So I think
you can match it up literally person for person. You can put Rice on Griezmann because Griezmann's playing in the
sort of a withdrawn role, isn't he?
Not really a 10, but he's also not an 8 that's very attacking. So you can have Declan Rice on him. You then have Jordan Henderson picking up Rabiot, who just does whatever he wants, and Henderson is fine with that. And then you have the interesting battle, as I just covered, Bellingham and Tuchemane, which is going to be a battle for the years, like not just Sunday, but 4 years, because they're both really young. So I think the midfield is where the game's won if Southgate has the bollocks to keep the same. And as I said, I do think we have the strength, like Lucas Hernandez. You said Tio's playing. It's Teo.
Yeah.
From what I've seen, like when I've watched France, there's always a gap behind him.
Well, I think he's much in a similar vein to Luke Shaw. He's much better going forwards than he is going backwards. Not to say that he's bad going backwards, but they're very, shall we say, positive-minded.
He looks bad going backwards. There's a lot. I was not watching him against Poland. Not Poland, because Poland was crap. Who was the Australia game?
Mm-hmm.
Australia got all of their chances by just going down the right wing and putting a cross in. So continue doing it. Just we can do that too. I'd put Foden on him and just let Foden run around him, see what we can get. But I'm scared the Southgate's going to revert to a 5 at the back.
I think you're right to be concerned, but I think I'm going to, on this very rarest of occasions, I think I'm going to stick up for Gareth Southgate and say that he's he's shown in this tournament, as I said earlier, that tactically he's prepared to tweak things in game and move things around when they don't work. So if he carries on that vein of form, I'm hoping that he will stick to what we've done thus far. And then if it doesn't work, he changes to suit the match. So
I predicted, I had this discussion at work. I promise I do some work at work. I was talking to one of my colleagues, and I said, I wonder if he's flexible enough to have it so that when we're off the ball, and kind of going back to matching up, as I just said, with the midfield, does Declan drop into a 5 off the ball? But then when we're on the ball, step up into the midfield.
And then you get the wide players to come in narrow and squeeze into a 4.
So then you can naturally have a swing. So because of how Griezmann plays and that space that he occupies, you can more or less have Declan Rice sit in between Stones and Maguire when they're on the ball to say, right, come on in, and then he can step out But then as soon as we get the ball, then he attacks with the midfield. Obviously, that means it's a lot of work for Declan, but he is good enough to do it. We know he is.
I was going to say, yeah, he's clearly very good enough to do it, so that's not a problem. I think you're right. I think maybe we see a slight difference in the three in central midfield. I think maybe, like you said, Declan Rice maybe falls into an anchor man, and then you've got a two in Bellingham and Henderson in front. So then he can either step up when we're attacking or drop back and make a five, and like you said, drop to a four. That's possible, but whether Gareth Southgate has learnt that trick yet, I think a lot of my criticism of Gareth Southgate was simply just the fact that he hadn't been in management for very long, didn't have much experience. So he's kind of learning on the job, I suppose, which is where my attitude has kind of changed towards him now. I think now I've realised that he is learning as he goes, and we're seeing proof that he is learning. Then I think I'm prepared to give him much more slack than I would have previously.
I think when we went back to the Nations League, and actually looking back at our conversation, I'm going to say this, but Captain Birdseye was right. He was using the Nations League to test certain things. And now, obviously, he's tested it. It's not worked. He's not gone to it, if that makes sense. He's gone elsewhere.
I think the only thing I will say on that is it was very hard during the Nations League to see what he was trying to do, because the formation
was a lot of players.
Yeah, but the formation was always the same. The style of play was always the same. I've noticed.
I think he was going through his personnel. That's what I think he was doing.
Yeah, but we're also playing a completely different system and a completely different style of play out at this World Cup. I would argue that our style of play is based on the conditions we're playing in. Even though the stadiums are air conditioned, it's still got to be really hot out there. So this short passing game that Gareth Southgate's adopted, I think, has been done to limit the amount of running that they do to conserve energy as much as possible.
I just think he's found a formation that works, personally.
Yes, I think he's found the right players that work. I think we saw with Mason Mount that he was like, okay, Mason Mount's not going to work as I want him to in this system. So I'm going to bring in the experience of Jordan Henderson, who I know is a good foot soldier, and he will do the job.
My only complaint, and it's not really a complaint because obviously he's still doing the job, but I still would like to see Phil Foden play more centrally. But if we're going to play with this, you can't put Phil Foden as the three midfielders as they're currently being deployed. So, and obviously now we're playing France. Then obviously after France, it's if whoever wins it's likely Portugal. I think that the time of playing that kind of Phil Foden in the 10 with wingers is over. Raheem Sterling is also returning to the camp, so
I don't think he's been missed. If I was him, I think I probably would have stayed at home following what happened.
He is returning to the camp, and he'll be.
I think he's like fourth choice now, really, because if you look at arguably maybe fifth because you've got Jack Grealish as well. But if you look at Phil Foden, I know you want him to play centrally, but his record at this World Cup shows that he doesn't need to start in the centre to play.
And him and Saka are probably confirmed first and second choice. I would start Rashford, not against France. I think Bukayo Saka's the better chance against Rashford defensively.
Yeah, I agree.
Than Rashford. But I think if you're playing like against Senegal, maybe against Portugal, where their wing backs aren't as like Dalot's good at going forward, but he's a good defender.
Yeah.
You could start Rashford maybe against like Dalot or Guerrero. Right. Well, actually, Guerrero, then you'd probably start Saka.
So before we move on to our other topic for today, now your colours to the mast.
I can't.
Who do you think is going to win?
Depends on the tactics.
Come on.
England.
I am predicting that it goes 0-0 and it goes to penalties, and England sadly get knocked out. That is going to be my prediction.
I'm going England win, because I think if we go 4-3-3, win, or 4-5-1, however you want it.
And our sad news of the week for Dan and the absent captain is Charlton have sacked yet another manager. Ben Garner has been shit-canned. Dan, go for it, mate.
I don't know where to start. I mean, first of all, I think it's very harsh. The situation is very harsh on Ben Garner. How you expected him to come in completely. So to go back to kind of Lee Bowyer, so 3 managers now. Lee Bowyer played a very direct style of football. It was on the floor, but quite get the ball up to Josh Parker, Chuck Sanike, whoever was kind of the second man, play off him and then get Lyle Taylor or Connor Washington into space to score the goals. Nigel Atkins tried something similar with Jaden Stockley. Wasn't very successful at it. Johnny Jackson did something similar, was pretty successful with Stockley, but defensively, Jacko's team was a nightmare. But again, as well, I'll get onto in a minute, that hasn't changed. So we hired Ben Garner in the summer with pretty much the same group of players that Nigel Atkins and Jackson had. There's been turnover, but not massive. Mm-hmm. The idea was that Ben Garner was going to come in, and Jacko was sacked because they didn't like his style of play, again, direct. So they hired Ben Garner, who played his idea is slow, patient build-up play on the floor, get the ball through to your strikers. But the problem is we have players that just can't play that style of football. Especially, I think if you're going to play out from the back, you need a keeper that's comfortable on the ball, which we do have until I jinxed him. And then he got injured to the World Cup. But we have centre-backs that can't play that style. Ryan Inniss can't touch a football. He prefers to go for their legs. So, and Sam Lavelle is 6'3" giant. We don't have wing backs at the club. For example, last night, if anyone watched last night's game, we had a left back playing on right back and a striker playing left back. Again, don't know what's happened there. We've he's more of a winger. He's like he plays the front 3 positions effectively.
Who was it? Jaisimi?
Tyrese Campbell.
Okay, right.
Please don't play Jaisimi ever again. We'll get on to Jaisimi in a minute. And then in the midfield is probably our strongest position. It's where our best players are: George Dobson, Scott Fraser. Good on the ball. Scott Fraser is very good on the ball. George Dobson is there to just murder people in the midfield, frankly. That's what he's good at. He's a great tackler of a football. And then he just passes the ball off and lets everyone else do it. And then we have wingers, but they claim to be wingers. Blackett Taylor claims to be a winger. I claim he's injured. He plays a couple of games and he'll miss a couple. Charlie Kirk depends, I don't know, maybe what he's had for dinner, I guess, on whether he plays football or not. And Jalin Jaisimi, who's had a very injury-hit year this year, we've now had for 2 years, and we have seen nothing that would suggest he was where we signed him, in my opinion, off the back that he ripped us a new one when he played for Swindon.
Right.
And I have a feeling it was more we were really bad than he was good. Right. I don't think he's that good of a player. We just don't have any. And then again, so then we get out front where we had Chucks and Stockley, and luckily Miles Leaburn came through the academy, but obviously injured. In recent months, we've lost 5 or 6 players to injury. Like I said at the beginning of the season, I'm having this conversation with you and the captain when we talked about league predictions. We've got a good start in 11, but 2 injuries and we're out. That's what happened. We lost Miles Leaburn, so we didn't have anyone scoring goals. The defence started this year with Ewan O'Connell, who a lot of Charlton fans were a bit unsure of, but I thought he was very good. Inniss was better next to O'Connell than when he's been next to anyone else. And to sum it up, Friday, but Ben Garner's been, I don't want to say wangling for the sack, but his press conferences in the last month or so have been very much, what do you want me to do about it?
Yeah, he's not given 2 shits really, is he, about what's coming out of his mouth anymore? Even I've noticed.
He just said it. He would come out and say like, "What
do you want me to do?" I don't know.
Even when we were winning games, he was saying like, "We might be in 9th or wherever." He said, "But we've got nowhere near what the teams around us have," and that's maybe not something you should say in public. People would argue, but he's not wrong.
Didn't he also come out recently and say that the investment that he was promised was only a fraction of what he was actually given?
So we lost to Port Vale, not last weekend, the weekend before. We lost 1-0. And after the game, he basically came out and said, "This is my squad. This isn't the squad that I wanted when I came into the club. This isn't what I was told I'd have when I signed for the club. I haven't been able to go out and improve this squad." He said, "I've got players here that aren't at the level that we are at, let alone looking to play." And he said a lot of them are on their last warning, which turns out he was on his last warning.
Yeah.
Because last Friday we played Cheltenham, and I went to the game. Yeah, more of the same. He wants to play again. It's one of those things where you could blame him and say, "Well, if you keep trying to play this football and it doesn't work, why don't you change it?" But then at the same time, the owner should have put him in a position. If they knew when they hired Ben Garner he wanted to play this football,
They should have made
then
the finances
you should make the
available for
finances
players.
available.
Yeah.
And the thing that bothers me the most is 2 players that we let go for free because Sangard's son didn't think they were good enough. Was Ben Parrington at left back and Connor Washington up front. Now, Connor Washington's negative was his finishing.
But his positive was his link
His
up.
positive was his link-up play, his movement. He got into loads of space. He pulled defenders out the waist. I mean, Jaden Stockley, I'm not surprised. Jaden Stockley scored 20 goals last year. He's got 2 this year. 2.
Right.
The only difference around him is Connor Washington. The rest is the same. We've still got Corey Blackett-Taylor. The lad from Palace, Jason Raksaki, he either is Lionel Messi or Bambi, and there's no middle ground. He doesn't play okay. Like, he either plays and skills up the whole team and you go, he's really good, or you go, have you seen a football before? So, again, and it's not helpful for him. Like, he's 18 years old and I don't really know what he's getting out of it. Like,
this doesn't seem to have been, on reflection, a very good marriage of manager and club. I think if there was more money available, then you see, it seems genuinely weird because it seems like you've maintained a squad that were designed to play the way Bowyer and Jacko did. And then you've brought in a manager who is going to play a completely different style. And if you are not going to put the money into the club to bring in the players that manager wants to play, then why do you hire him in the first place? I understand your point that if the manager's trying to play a certain way, but he doesn't have the players to do so, then he needs to change his style to adapt to what he has. But
why do it in the first case?
Yeah, why bring him in if you know full well that you're not going to back him and change the style of play? So
I find it bizarre. The most bizarre thing I find is, so when Sangard first came over, he put in this 5-year plan, which most owners do. That's not a problem.
It's all bollocks, but yeah, carry on.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you just kind of go, well, that's cute, but come on, realistically, it's not.
Prove it or shut up.
Yeah. And then again, like, I wasn't expecting, like, if we didn't get to the Premier League in 5 years, I wouldn't be like, oh, but you know, like, he come in, and that first season, he spent some money. I'll give him his due. He spent some money. I think he thought, I'll have one window where I'll throw $1 million at it.
Yeah.
And that'll do it. So we signed Chucks back from Birmingham and Charlie Kirk, and there was one more, Sam Lavelle. 3 players we brought in. All have been. Chucks, when fit, is a good player. The other 2 have been very hit and miss. And since then, he has just stopped investing. There's a lot of off the field issues that apparently have been sorted with nice financial payoffs, according to Twitter. So that doesn't look particularly good for Sangard and his portfolio, I guess. Yeah, it's a bit of a mess. If you're a manager, my concern right now is if you're the next manager we get is 100% going to be a yes man, because any manager in their own mindset,
much like Ben Garner,
will look at what Ben Garner had and go, well, I ain't having that.
Yeah, I ain't touching that.
Nigel Atkins was a yes man.
Is it time for Steve Bruce at the Valley?
Could be. I mean, I've seen
Mark Hughes coming up from Wrexham or wherever he is.
I've seen the yes man that I'm convinced we will hire.
And who's that?
Kenny Jackett's been at the Valley for the last 2 games.
Oh, okay.
And it's been reported in the press in Portsmouth, because obviously that was his old club, that he's been interviewed. And with his Millwall ties, if Sangard hires Kenny Jackett,
This is going to be a disaster, isn't it?
Man, the fans are already after. I mean, we got knocked out of the FA Cup by Stockport last night, and we lost 3-1, and it should have been more.
Oh dear.
So the fans are already out for blood. If he hires Kenny Jackett, Jesus, he's in trouble. I've seen some of the. I've seen 3 names that have been rumoured to have already been interviewed. Kenny Jackett, again, all rumours from different newspaper articles, etc. Kenny Jackett from the Portsmouth line. Someone, EFL Live said Neil Redfern.
Right.
Who, if people remember, played for Charlton in the 90s. I think he managed Leeds for a while, not long ago.
He was at Barnsley as well, wasn't he? I think.
Yeah, and he's been managing over in America, or coaching over in America. And the one this morning is Ian Foster.
Who is he?
Who manages the England under-20s.
Right. Never heard of him.
Neither have I, but apparently he's been interviewed. And the other one's Dean Holden, who was at Stoke and was sacked last year, maybe the year before.
Former Bolton player.
That's Stewart.
Okay, right, my mistake.
And there's also like the other ones that I've seen linked are Mark Bircham, who manages over in Italy.
Former QPR player.
For a team called Como.
Right. Yeah.
They're like doing quite well in Serie B. Lee Bowyer's been up there, but I don't think he'd take it back. I mean, I'd quite happily have Bowyer back, but I don't think he'd come back under Sangard. So it's kind of up in the air. I tend to think the Kenny Jackett one's probably true. I could see Sangard saying, look, you've got teams out of League One when they've not had the budget before.
Yes, but this does, as you said, strike as tone deaf and has, I think for me, it's just further proof that your owner has no clue about the actual club in any shape or form, because you just wouldn't hire him based on his reputation. It'd be like Charlton trying to appoint Neil Harris. You know, it just wouldn't go down well.
He's 6 months' time when we've got rid of Jackett.
It just
because he's about to lose his
job.
Who
would you like to see?
I want Lee Bowyer back.
You want Lee Bowyer back?
I want Bowyer back, but I don't think he will. I mean, I don't know. Genuinely don't know. The one I was interested in before was Chris Hughton, but again, I don't think he'd come in given the circumstance. So that's intriguing. The one thing I would say before we finish, Peter Varney, the Charlton director when we were in the Premier League.
Yeah.
He has recently been very active on social media, claiming that there's a game Charlton playing in the League Cup. Is it the quarterfinals we're in now? I don't know wherever it is. I think it's the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
We've got Brighton at the Valley. He's done a campaign getting Charlton fans to come. He says because he's bringing guests that need to see the atmosphere and what it's like when fans bring the club together. Right. So it's being rumoured / indicated, I'm assuming.
There's another footballing takeover.
Potential owners that are coming. The rumour is they're an American franchise owner.
Right.
Obviously, don't know what that means. That could mean an MLS team. That could mean an NFL team.
It could be anything.
It could be a minor league team, like not anyone a big team. It could be a little team.
Yeah, but as long as they got money to put into Charlton, that's
here's the
all
thing,
you need to know.
Don't even, and this is the thing. Like I saw, you get them on Twitter. There was this idiot Gillingham fan, which they all are, so that's not really a surprise. But he was tweeting like, "Oh, Charlton player fans, they expect someone to come in and pump money into the club." No. I want you to come in. You can put in the bare minimum, like Roland Duchâtelet put in the bare minimum. But the one thing he always did was make sure that we had a squad.
Yeah.
So as much as I wanted him out because of his off-field stuff that he was doing at the club, on the pitch, we weren't awful.
Yeah.
People have this thought, especially the generation kind of above me, Charlton should be a Premier League team. You are where you are, frankly. We've been in the Premier League for 20 years.
It's like saying Man United should win the Premier League every year. No, we shouldn't. We're nowhere close.
I think, the size of the club, probably a championship side. But we've spent most of the last 15 years in League One. This is where we are. The top of League One, yes, and then spells and flirts with the championship, but this is where we are. So I just like us to, I'm not saying go and invest, but just put a little bit of money in. Just say to the manager, look, here's a little bit. Like Lee Bowyer actually said about Roland, like in one of his interviews not long ago, he did since he left Charlton. he liked working with Roland because it was, here's your budget, I'm off.
Yeah, see you later.
I don't
Bye.
care. I don't care. Just stick to this is your transfer budget. This is your wage budget.
Stick
Don't
to
give a
it.
monkeys what you do with it. See you later.
Yeah.
And it was almost like that's better than a chairman. I'd rather and looking back, like obviously at the time it weren't great, but now we've got an owner that won't put money in but wants to control everything.
Yep.
But what are you controlling? Because even then, like Roland still owns the ground. Roland still owns the training ground.
Yeah.
So all you own is the football club.
Yeah.
So what? And I saw like someone say like, oh, but what if he tries to run the club into the ground? I said, well, then that all he loses out on is the football club. He
Eventually,
loses
he'll be
money
replaced.
too.
If he tries to run it into the ground, eventually he will be replaced because
I'm convinced he's trying to sell.
as soon
I think he was trying to sell already
yeah,
because I think he, as I said, he tried that investment in that first year or two. It went wrong, and I think he realised, shit.
I think the Glazers are a similar example in the sense of obviously we're talking about different spectrums in money and stuff. But when the financial model or the ownership model that they had in mind stops working, people will leave. And I think it's the same with Sangard because if I remember rightly, you said that he was trying to do it for it to be like self-sustainable, cost-effective,
Yeah, it's just not going to
and
happen.
it's just not going to happen, especially when you're in that league trying to fight to get out of it because there is potentially very little money to earn in League One. It's when you get to the Championship and the Premier League where the TV revenue is so much more that you're actually going to make your money unless you've got fantastic sponsors that
And
you've
when you're
managed
paying,
to.
so I think again, like little things like he's paying rent to Roland for the training ground and the football
Yeah,
ground. So that's a certain amount of money each month
yeah, that could go into the
that
playing
could
budget.
be put into the squad. Yeah, if you
Yeah,
just hadn't been a tight bugger to begin with. And I remember like even looking back, like, and I remember me and Pete agreeing with you, but when we first talked about, because I remember the first year we did the podcast predictions, you'd put Charlton to go up last year.
yeah,
And me and Pete started laughing, and you were like, what, you're a big side? And we were like, there's no one at the club that knows football.
yeah,
We're still there. Like, I see a lot of Charlton fans going and having a go at Steve Gallen. Oh, well, players he's brought in isn't good. Yeah, because the people above him are a chairman and the chairman's son.
yeah. But I mean,
That
also the other thing is that you can only bring in a certain quality of player if you've got the finances to do so. You're very lucky in this day and age at any football club to bring in a player of really high quality on very low wages. There have to be a very unique situation. So you can argue that the quality of player you brought in is crap, but if you're only able to sign, if you've only got the money for crap instead of average, then you're only going to be able to sign crap.
so my thinking of what I think Stangard's doing, I think he keeps the club through till February March time.
Yeah.
I think his aim is get to January, sell off, and again I might be completely wrong. Sell off Miles Leaburn, sell off Zach Mitchell, kind of the youngsters that have broke into the first team and look like footballers compared to the
And
ones
then
that are
he's going
already
to go.
pros. And then say, right, I'm going to keep them because that we sold Mason Burstow for £2 million to Chelsea in the summer.
Yeah, and look how well that worked out for Mason Burstow.
Where's that? Yeah, well, look how well it's gone out for Mason Burstow, and look how well it's worked out for us.
Yeah,
We didn't see any of the money, so I think, and Miles Leaburn is better than Mason Burstow in every aspect of his game.
well, the only thing you can hope then is that you get a substantial amount of money for him before Sangard does do the odds.
My only hope is that Miles Leaburn, because of how connected he is to the club, both his parents are connected to the club, maybe he stays till the summer.
I would argue that if Leaburn has any sort of shoulder on his head, he will have a look at what happened to Mason Burstow and go, yeah, no, I'm playing, I'm staying. I think that should ultimately be the attitude of any young player: is if you're playing, stay where you are.
My hope is, as I said, like because of his dad's time at the club and his mum works for the club and has a lot to do with she's a player liaison. Imagine your mum being the player liaison.
Yeah,
Mum, sort out my shit. Doesn't make nothing's changed for him. Like, and as I said, he's the club's leading goal scorer. I think still.
yeah.
He's been injured 2 months. He's back training, so they say he might be back for games Christmas time, which would be nice. But I mean, we're 6 points off the relegate. We're actually 6 points off the relegation zone and 6 points off the playoffs. So we're in a really strange place. But I mean, we're getting tanked by Cheltenham and Stockport recent.
That's the uniqueness of League One, though, isn't it? With just a simple win or two, you can all of a sudden rocket straight back up the table.
League One's the weirdest league in English football. Now, I still think the Championship is the best for football in general. But the League One's so weird because when you come out, for example, if you go from the conference, you come out the conference, you go into League Two. The play's very similar. The budgets are quite similar. You get 1 or 2 teams that pay a little bit more. You can quite easily get a double promotion.
Yeah.
And as Forest Green are showing, then you come up to League One and the big boys are starting to filter in.
Yeah, because
like
you've got
Sheffield Wednesday, Portsmouth,
yeah.
Bolton, they're paying money because you get those clubs that maybe have fallen from the Premier League, but are still, because I think you get 5 years of pay once you leave the Premier League, right? So some of them will drop again.
Yeah.
And have bigger budgets, or you will get the occasional year where a Championship team. But I remember, I think the best year of League One football was when we came down to League One the first time, and the League One was Leeds, Norwich, Charlton, Bournemouth, Southampton, Millwall, Bradford, Coventry, and it was just like up until the last game of the season. 9 teams had a chance to win promotion.
Blimey.
Or get in the playoffs. And I think all 6 of the playoff sides could go up. So Norwich had won the league already. Then I think it started the day Norwich, Leeds, Millwall, Swindon, us. And at full time, at one point in the game, it would completely turned around. We were second, Swindon, Millwall.
Yeah.
And then obviously it finished. That was the year that it was all set for a Charlton Millwall playoff final, but we were shit at penalties, which has been a theme of this podcast.
So, in conclusion, your hope for Charlton is new manager, new owner?
New manager, I'd stay in the league, please.
All right, lovely. And on that note, we'll wrap up. Again, shout out to our associates. Let us talk mental health.
2-4-2 wins in 2 weeks.
Oh, there you go. Look at that. So get down there and follow them on Twitter at @letustalk_MH. And if you're in the local area where they're having a game, go and give them some support because all the money does go to charity. And the Proper Blokes Club, walking and talking, breaking the stigma surrounding men's mental health at Blokes Club on Twitter or www.theproperblokesclub.co.uk. Thank you once again, that man Dan, for joining me.
No problem.
We will be back with you again at the end of the quarterfinals,
which is
in about
Tuesday?
2 days. So
Tuesday. There's a game tomorrow. There's
two games tomorrow.
Monday night.
2 games.
Last game's Monday.
Saturday. Is it? Are you sure?
Is there 2 games Saturday?
I think so. You got the England game in the afternoon.
7 o'clock.
Anybody on YouTube, you can like rewind the video to when we had the brackets up, and it will tell you when all the games
are. Tomorrow, there's no World Cup games.
Is there not?
No. Saturday, there's 2 World Cup games. No, tomorrow there's none. I've just looked.
Okay, yeah. No.
Oh, there is. What is this thing? No, there is. Yeah. So tomorrow, Croatia, Brazil, 3 o'clock.
Yep.
I can watch that on my train. That's nice. Holland, Argentina. I will miss that. That's gonna. I'm gonna have
Saturday is England, France,
and Morocco, Portugal. Yeah.
Right.
I'm gonna have to. Oh, I can watch the Morocco Portugal game on my train home. Lovely.
There we go. So we'll probably drop another podcast on probably Monday, maybe.
Probably Tuesday.
So
because I will be tired.
There will be one coming soon. Anyway, thank you all very much for tuning in. Again, do all the likes, subscribes, head over to Twitter and give us a follow at FBallFunders. Is it? FBall?
Yes.
No? Is that it? Is there an
F
underscore?
Funders? No.
Okay. And yeah, leave a comment. If there's anything you want us to talk about, you want our opinions on, then do all that lovely stuff. Until next time, take care.